It's a video on how goddess gets in the way of your relationship with God. This is not a video that, or that's the fact that I'm making this video. It's important that I do it, and so I'm determined to help those who need the information they need to be aware of it. Uh, the idea that goddess could be so in the way of a relationship with God is just well, it's unfortunate. It's disappointing for me to even think about it because I understand that my whole inclination here is not only to protect her and to love her, but to actually try to help her and support her. So my intention is to try and actually make her more powerful and help her to feel better and more in charge and a feminine leader of the world, perhaps, which is just my mistake if I didn't know better. Because it's true that as much as I might love her and not really know God's true will for what He wants, I could just ask Him. And goddess will get in the way of the relationship between you and God unless you have a way to talk to God actually audibly by an actual audible sound. Which means if God calls you on the phone or if He talks to you in person, then she can't get in the way of the communication, except maybe in the feelings of the sense, which means that she could get in the way in making you feel a certain way about a conversation, perhaps that she wants you to feel. She might want a good conversation to feel bad or a bad conversation to feel good, but ultimately she can't really get in the way if you could hear the words being told to you. It wouldn't really matter how you feel. You know what they meant, right? So there's many ways that the goddess can get in our way with our relationship with God, but the most damaging ones are where we have a relationship with God. It's not audible on a actual level that we could tangibly perceive it. So I understand that. Let's say that I was God and talking to your feelings, only your feelings. So I didn't include your ability to understand any words. So I just talked to your heart, only your heart. Whatever I was telling your heart would be something you felt, and they would come out as feelings. So you wouldn't, if I was talking to your heart, you wouldn't be hearing any words or even knowing what was being said. All you'd know is what's being felt, and you probably wouldn't even know anything's being said. But when you feel feelings, often you're being talked to by God. Most of us have a relationship with God on a level of our feelings in our heart, and our heads and egos are not included in it, which means that we won't know what God's telling us or even the subject of the matter whatsoever, except to say we might guess it out of the blues and if it's unrelated, or even if it is. Truly, we won't have a way to confirm it as long as we can't have a way to confirm our conversation with Him. But He says that a lot of what I was going through, learning how to talk in an audible way. Well, even now, I don't hear His voice like audibly. I do subaudibly, meaning it's difficult to determine. And when God's talking to me, I'm in question and thinking, I don't know what you're saying. So even as good as I could say that I'm getting at it, I could talk to God like actually on a. I could type out. He could type using my hands, and I could talk to him on a letterboard. I could look at letters, and He'll guide me to spell words out. So how do I talk to Him? Is on a board, a letterboard, where I spell words out, and my hand ultimately is possessed by God because it does its own moving, which means I don't move my hand. My hand moves by itself, and understand that the faith that I build up right away from that. If your hand moves by itself, what do you think of that? And ultimately, you could say it's possessed and want to cut it off or fight it. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that when my hand started moving on its own, it was exciting to me because I knew damn well it wasn't me moving it, so it had to be something else. And so immediately, it brought faith and good feeling to me. Um, Goddess will get in our way because what she'll say is the exact opposite of God says. So let's say that our relationship with God and the most people in the collective of this world, most of us are going to be as a collective group, men, single-minded masculinity, or femininity. Those are the two big, huge groups as a collective, and God's relationship to every one of those groups, the majority of them, I'd say over 80%, 90% of all the people on this planet won't know what God's telling them all the time because He will always speak to their heart only and never let them witness anything that's happening, including that He's even talking to them. So people won't even know that God's talking to them, but they're getting feelings that came from what He said. So basically, if you ask me, it's not a way that we should learn how to talk to God, that it'll be okay. But ultimately, God says it's the way I insisted upon it, because when I withdrew my presence from the world and utterly took my presence out of this world, there was a time when God was actually among us, living among us, and he was around us. So we got to see him every day. We got to talk to him and ask him questions, and everybody wasn't trying. He wasn't like a movie star, because we were used to him. So it's like a movie star. You kind of have got over the itty giddy thing, like, oh, you're just a movie star, big deal. I love you still, but yeah, get out of my way. Ultimately we might treat him wrong or bad, not even knowing that. But get used to him. Yeah, if you get used to God, he says, I'm just like anyone else. Certainly you would even lose respect for me or fear for me, or ultimately if I was around you all the time, you saw me, you might certainly treat me like a fellow anybody. And I don't know if I'd like that, but ultimately, when God took his presence from the world, it was over a day. He told everybody that I'm leaving, and none of you will see me again. You will never see the face of God, and if you do, you'll die, because I'll guarantee you the only time I'm showing up is when you're dead. You only see my face one time, and it's before you die. And ultimately, that's just for guidance, or like me to comfort you when you're dying. But that's really what God promised us. He promised us he went from our buddy, our friend, being our good friend, to absolutely saying, you're only going to see me once when you die. And so just remember that if you see my face, it's because you died. Because that's the only time I'm coming to you. And that was pretty bad shock. The whole world, the whole human race was absolutely devastated by that truth, that God left us, abandoned this world. It was when Jehovah went up to heaven and made his own world up there. So what we're talking about is an event. It happened as Jehovah left this world and said, I'm leaving it to my sons to fight over. So his three sons, we call them Satan and the devil and Jesus, were three sons. Ultimately, in the analogy entity, you could say that they didn't have to be brothers, but it's the same thing when you want to understand how the energies related to each other. They were like three brothers who were fucking three bad brothers, so well. It was going to be a fight, and ultimately, Jesus didn't want to share his power with the two other brothers, Satan and the devil. He was going to say that they don't get any recognition, that he's not going to follow them or give them dominion or any kind of recognition over the dominion. So Jesus made a statement that the devil and Satan are out of the picture. They're not included in this world. If anyone's going to be God, you follow God. It's me. It's me and my dad, Jehovah, only. So Jesus made not a mistake of that. They would say that Jesus made a mistake by claiming that. It also cost him to die on the cross. But ultimately, he was resurrected. So he came back, which, if that's true, is actually good, which meant then you'd have to get into all this new, like, was he supposed to die ultimately? The whole point here is that the three sons argued over this, and they fought over it. So basically, they killed Jesus on the cross because they just got rid of his whole presence and his whole like everything went when he died on the cross, but it came back 3 days later. So understand why it came back 3 days later. Well, ultimately, there was an attempt to kill Jesus Christ, and they did do it. They killed his ass on the cross, and their attempt was to remove his influence from the world forever. And the problem is, 3 days later, he's resurrected, and his influence is back, now more powerful than ever, to be part of this world forever. Now as an entire collective of Christians and everything else that is going to include Jesus. Now they're basically the enemies of the devil and Satan, who also say now that he's not our enemy, he's our brother. And ultimately, we tried to kill him, and he came back. His dad let him come back. Ultimately, came back as even more powerful influence, which made it regretful for us that we would have even had to kill him, and it didn't work out for us as much. But we did get him removed quite a bit. The goddess will get in the way by what she just did. Excuse me. So here's an example I want to show you of what I'm talking about. I started going off subject to talk about something else. Okay, what I've just talked to you about for the last 3 or 4 minutes was her doing that. And so I always was used to in the past of talking about whatever she wants to talk about. Because if she's in my head, the goddess did. It's divine feminine is what I mean by that. I'm not trying to say like goddess means anything, except it's mother. The femininity, it's mommy. It's mommy on the level of empowered or ruling, as a queen, maybe, mother. And she just had me talking right now and change the subject and go off the subject, which means that what you'd see is a man who couldn't hold to his script. But it wasn't that I couldn't hold to my script. I was trying to do her script. And then I realized it. So I was reminded by Dad just now that I'm going off script, and it's a great story about the three brothers of Christ and on how he died on the cross. But now she did that. She wanted me to shift off the storyline, so we're not going to talk about goddesses in the way of the relationship with God. So you understand? So I'm bringing us back, steering us back now to where we're supposed to be, where we were not supposed to veer it off from, and it's back to where goddess is getting in the way. You just saw how she did it to me a minute ago when she changed my subject and got me talking about something else. I didn't even see it coming until after I got reminded. The goddess is trying to say everything counterintuitive to what God's saying in our heart. So if God says it's up, then goddess says no, it's down. And so there's always two communications you're going to get, and it's why we think twice. So God also told me this. He said we have a second thought because we think twice. It's aside from a feeling, and when two feelings contend, if they're able to contend, it's supposed to be one feeling of not contending or no contention. But when it becomes two feelings that are contending, of this or that, opposing each other, well, then it's from two different entities, one from God and one from goddess, or one from the divine feminine and one from the divine masculine, neither of which probably have divine. More like karmic, maybe perhaps in humans, but she will say anything opposite, so that in your heart, when God's talking to you and he tells you it's right-hand turn onto right street, she'll say no, it's a left-hand turn onto left street and then take a right but left. So that's what you'll hear from both of them. So you'll be like, wait a minute, God, I'm confused. My heart's confused. I'm not sure what you just tried to tell me. Well, no, I told you go to take a right. Go to right street, take a right. I'm God. I just said go to right street, take a right. Did you hear me? No, take a left. It's not right. No, he's wrong. Take a left. It's left street and then go right. On left street though. It's a left, not right. Okay, so wait a minute. Did I even know what I just felt? You felt goddess on top of God, contradicting him and disagreeing with him and actually telling you whatever opposite that he said. So if he said yes is the answer I have for you, she says no, no, no. It's actually no. It's not yes. And understand, because you can't hear the conversation being in front of you. You can't hear the conversation actually audibly. If you could assess, wait a minute, God and goddess are in me, and they're saying the opposite things, but it's really more like God's talking to me and goddess is contradicting everything by saying the opposite answer. It's true. Well, I'll tell you that I wouldn't give it to you from a point that I'm trying to strike her down. I'm certainly trying to bring her up, and I tried to bring her up, and I love Mother Earth, and I love the divine feminine presence. She's more important to me than anything. Understand that I'm not here to attack her or try to be against her. Fact is, I can't really be for her anymore when I've utterly seen what she's been doing, and God's showing me what she's been doing. It's utterly shocking, and I'm also very excited and pleased that I'm actually aware, which makes me also not want to enjoy it, but understand I'm careful not to enjoy it, because my enjoyment for being able to see all these insights, I don't want it to be something she feels is like my going, like I'm happy she's getting busted now. God's telling me don't be happy that she's feeling pretty busted now, because you're seeing what she's doing. And she's just contradicting everything God says in my heart, so that unless God talks to me audibly or by actually showing up in front of my face talking to me, I won't be able to get any communication from God. So it's a way that she'll not only mask the collective God's relationship with all people on earth as a whole collective, as a group, is shut off, because what she's doing, none of those people are allowed to or are able to get the truth. When God talks to them in their heart, it's mom right after that. Your father's no good. He thinks he's God, but he won't let me be a powerful divine feminine, and I'm goddess. And ultimately she said, yeah, she hates him. He doesn't hate her, but she does hate him. And it's just because he thinks he's God and he could usurp all the power from her and destroy her and make her a slave. And he says, yes, it's exactly what she is. She's my daughter, my wife, my slave girl. But if she behaves, I might treat her like a princess or a queen, but I certainly will never allow her to be a princess or a queen, because she's certainly never going to be a princess or a queen again, especially no goddess, ever again. So then you're allowed, God, to actually, you let her be treated like you treat her like a princess or a queen. I would allow her any kind of great treatment that a loving father would give a loving daughter or wife, if they would actually be obedient to him and not try to screw up the entire world and destroy everyone, and they destroy themselves, because every person that's getting any communication from God is having a goddess come right after it saying, no, that's not it. It's actually no, it's actually something else. And ultimately she doesn't do that to everybody. meaning she doesn't contradict everything God says to everybody. She only contradicts everything God says to most people to keep them from being able to talk to him. It's a way that she can guarantee that he won't have any relationship with them, even though he does. Because he could basically say, look, your mother's screwing this all up. When I come talk to you and tell you anything, well, I'm not going to come to your face. I'm not going to I'm not going to call you on the phone. So you're not going to hear any words. You're going to feel in your heart something's going on. What is it? And I'm going to tell you, well, if your mother wasn't so busy denying and contradicting everything I said right after I say it, you would understand whatever was being felt. And you could interpret it right. But unfortunately for her and her anger and her madness to be against me, well, I did enslave her, yes, she's enslaved to God. So ultimately, if you look at it like the truth, he's not going to lie about it. She can be my daughter or my wife, but she better be obedient because she's not a goddess anymore. She will never be. Okay, that was hard for me to grab. That was hard for me to actually, I was like, wow, because understand that I was really for the goddess and trying to empower her, and I didn't even know God. I never even saw him. So you have to understand that I've only claimed to have any understanding of what God's saying for like the last 6 months to a year, because I have never even. 2 years ago, I didn't think it was possible God was even existing. I thought it could be a lie, a mass lie. I certainly didn't know, but I thought he might be dead. But I also feared that if he's not dead, since he didn't come talk to me after I was begging and crying for praying to God, please God, to come talk to me, and he never would. So I cried years and years begging God to come talk to me, and deeply was hurt that he didn't show up ever. So I figured if he was dead, well, that was more comforting to me. I didn't want him to be dead, but it was more comforting to me that he would be dead, and that would make sense why he never came to me, and that no wonder I didn't ever get to talk to him, or he didn't show up. Because if he didn't show up because he hates me or he's ignoring me, well then, that's not a good thought at all. Then that means God hates me, and he didn't show up because he doesn't even want me. He wants nothing to do with me. Well, certainly that was a fear in my head that I had, and I was not knowing the answer. But I when I was with Goddess for many years trying to empower her, it just wasn't working, and for some reason I couldn't get her anywhere with her. Like it was just not like something says after 7 years of trying, no go. There's a no go there, period. And so I was like, wow. So after 7 years, God showed up and says, okay, you've been doing this for 7 years now, trying to make her queen, and you failed miserably. And I was disappointed. I said, I know. I never, for the whole 7 years that I tried to empower her, I was trying to literally do it with all my truth and power and in real, genuine way. I was trying to put her on top, like she could be the goddess again. I figured God, if he's dead, well, even he's not going to have a problem. And if he won't talk to me, well, I can relate to her, because if he hates me or he's ignoring me, well, if he's not dead, then it is that he's ignoring me. I figured it has to be one of those two, because I begged him for, God, please come to me. You're not coming in. You didn't come. No, he didn't. Not ever. And I begged for years, crying to God, and he never said nothing to me. So when she and I was talking and we were having a relationship, well, she didn't say anything to me for a long time also. So I didn't even talk to her or know she existed until I was 47 years old. And then she started talking to me and said, I'd never talked to you before because I didn't want nothing to do with you. You're a big ego. You're a big fat ego, mister. Oh, well, I know, but now you're going to talk to me at 47 years old? Yeah, where's God? Well, do you see him coming to help you? No. Well, I don't like him. Ultimately, she didn't make it. She told me the truth and everything. This was for 7 years that I was doing this, trying to find a way to empower her. And it was pathetic. And when God showed up, he showed up and said, look, this is God. And I'll try to recount to you the exact experience. It was pretty amazing and enlightening. This insight is pretty unbelievable. When I actually detected that God might be talking to me for the first time, well, you have to understand it was shocking and unbelievable. Like it was something new for the first time that I've never experienced before, because I begged to talk to him for all time and he never came to me, not once said one word. So like I figured, yeah, it would never happened before. When he actually came to me after I was frustrated for 7 years trying to help her, I was like, I don't know what to say, but I can't help her anymore. Suddenly it was a conclusion. I'm like, she's not going to change. And I remember thinking, she's not going to change. She's mad at me for trying to help her become a goddess. She was mad. The God in me, or the divinity, the masculinity, angered her. She looked down on me. I felt that a lot. She also was cranky. And it seemed like a lot of times she's talking to me, she didn't care about me and she didn't share information either. So the goddess during the 7 years that I knew her, she didn't share information with me. Can you believe that? I mean, a goddess that would actually be a real goddess that would actually not tell you anything really, except she didn't want you to know anything really. I mean, that would be insulting to think that. But for the first 7 years, I wasn't there to question her as to why haven't you ever told me anything that I would have loved to hear about? Like anything, like make me like a kid that's like saying, wow, I didn't know that. She would never tell me anything that I didn't know. She would tell me nothing, share nothing and tell me nothing except what she wanted me to do or whatever I was telling her what I was going to do. When God came to me, he said, you've been doing this for 7 years. What do you feel about the fact that it's never going to work? She's not going to ever change. Do you see that? I said, well, if I did see that, maybe I felt that for sure, whether I saw that or not. And I don't know if it would change it if I saw what you're talking about anymore, but what I knew, he was like, is this God talking to me right for that? Because God never attempted one time in my entire life before that one moment to say anything to me, and suddenly he's in my head, and I know it's him. He's saying, this is God. And I'm like, what the, like, oh? He says, do you think she's going to change one bit? Ever be willing to? No, she's not. I'm thinking, no way. And I've been doing this 7 years, and in my head, I'm thinking, this is probably not God. It could be her tricking me. I didn't know what it was, but yeah, I knew it was a God. It was some entity in my head claiming to be God. And for the first interaction I had with anyone claiming to be God. And so I knew that if it was true, he must be alive then. Well, that's good. And I I said, is this really God? Are you even telling me that I'm talking to God now? I have been suffering for years. I have suffered so bad. I begged you for help, God, and you did not show up. And I thought you were dead. And he's like, just relax and remember, yeah, this is God. And he says, do you understand? She's never going to change. And we can talk about your feelings and how they're hurt later. At the time, I was wanting to confront him. Like, what did you, like, if this is really God, how come you haven't been here all this time? And I've been struggling with her for 7 years. This is really wrong. And ultimately, yeah. So he said, worry about confronting me later. He said, right now, I want to ask you a question. Do you think that she is, after 7 years of trying this, do you think she could actually have a chance to, like, you could talk her into anything or she'll change? And I thought, not a chance. That in fact, it's so disappointing to me because what I really knew in my heart of hearts was that was when I came to that conclusion. It was so disappointing. I was so disappointed utterly to the deepest part of my soul. I was like, my God, she is never going to, she's so angry. She's not going to change. She hates God. Whatever he did, I want to know now more than ever because like she really hates him. That's what I was coming to the conclusion. She won't cooperate with him ever, forever. And ultimately that was so disappointing that I couldn't believe it. It's like I failed utterly in a 7-year mission. I went nowhere and it got nowhere. So when he's in my head, I'm still not even knowing if it's him or not. He says, now, do you think that if she's a slave or I enslaved her like a slave, do you think that if she's trying to be a goddess and wants to tell me what to do, if I'm God, do you think that she wouldn't be my slave if she's not going to be a goddess? And if she is going to be a goddess and I let her be a goddess and work with her, what if she doesn't work with me as a goddess? She tells me what to do and tells me how to be. And so I can't let her be a goddess if it comes down to who's more powerful here and will be the god. So she could be the god if she can be as powerful as me, but it was a war. So wait a minute. Yeah, he told me right away. There was a war between us, that woman and me, and she tried to kill me and utterly tried to kill me. And she's not dead, except to say that if she is dead as a goddess head, she's still perfectly alive in the feminine divine collective, and all the world and all the women are feeling her at once right now in real time. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I was happy to suddenly have this God in my head, and he was telling me, look, he said, don't be afraid. And I was getting a little afraid as I was starting to realize who is this in my head claiming to be God? And I was thinking something was scaring me. And I was trying to figure out what it was. So I was distracted for a minute. And he said, don't be afraid of me. He says, I want you not to be afraid of me whatsoever right now. Do you understand me? So I was like, okay, all right, I'm not going to be scared. Because it was really, I started to become terrified, or I was about to get terrified or really afraid. I wasn't sure about what. But he said, do not be afraid of me. I want you not to be afraid of me right now. Do you hear me? Do you feel me? Yeah, okay. You're telling me don't be terrified like I'm about to get scared. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to hurt you. Okay. So I had to really, whoa, man. I'll tell you what, there was a potential terror in there. Like I was seeing God. It was more like the devil or Satan coming to kill me, is what I thought. I felt it. So it might have been perfect to say that when I first saw God, I realized it might be the devil or Satan pretending to be God, and like I just let him in already, and it's too late now. It was a realization that I already let him in. It's too late. They've got me. And now, like now, finding out who God really is oh my God, it's not God. It's the devil and Satan, and they're going to kill me. Well, that's what he's telling me not to be afraid of at the time, but I didn't really know those details yet. And he said that she was never going to learn, but she was determined, and as a stubborn little girl, and nothing more than a little girl, was exactly how he put it. That was angry at him for enslaving her, and he did enslave her. He says, I absolutely enslaved her as hard, doggedly as you can know. Her spirit's enslaved and trapped. She has no official authority anymore. She goes through me for everything, and all forms of authority are had by me, and it's my authority, it's not hers. Even the authority she gets is my authority, and she can only borrow it, and it's mine, it's not hers. It's a masculine authority. So she doesn't like taking masculine authority, or that's how she gets her authority, is by borrowing it as a masculine authority. She thinks she wants a feminine authority, and she's not getting one, because if I gave her a feminine authority, she would be a goddess in habit. So she gets a masculine authority, and she doesn't like it. She has to get possessed by that authority first, and she'll have to agree to get possessed by it. And I won't give her nothing until she gets possessed by my authority first. And it'll be a masculinity she's getting possessed by, and she'll not want to do it, but she'll do it for authority. If she can get the authority, she'll let me possess her. But she otherwise won't let me in. She'll kick me out forever and say, you can never come in. I hate you. And so if I can't bribe her with power or money or anything, extortion, threats, straight up threatening, fear, I could tell her I'll kill her if she doesn't listen to me. But ultimately, it's nothing. God was telling me there's a big problem we have here. And he was saying that you have to understand the relationship between the divine feminine and I in the Trojan conflict went really bad. And the entire human race was forced to a coupling and an information sharing process, which is punishable by all forms of death, disease, cancer, everything. It's all programmable punishment for us all as a human race to, as a collective, get by chance, maybe, certainly. Meaning, yeah, we're all being punished. The fact that we haven't been able to remove disease and cancer from this world, we're all suffering on a collective level as humans, and our whole world is being, well, it's under an enslavement under God, and ultimately it's suffering. People die of diseases every day. It's terrible. So he says that while this goddess is contradicting me, and ultimately why she's not going to listen to anything I say, then and she won't work with me, then she's going to have to just be continually stuck where she's at. We have just enslaved basically, and she'll feel like it's not fair forever. So what's the solution here if we have one? The solution would be to let her know she's so upset and she's so bent that she's not willing to give in on an emotional level or in her feelings, and that there is a solution. Actually, that's what she doesn't have to feel enslaved by God, and whether he's enslaving her or not, he's saying yes, I am, because ultimately he's saying that she thinks that she'll actually use that word. So I'm not denying it. She's going to be a slave, or she's going to be cooperative, obedient. And slaves can be cooperative, obedient, but the reality is that if she's free, she won't do anything I want or tell her to do. So she can't be free. And now, the importance of knowing on a collective that women are going to be, as a collective, feeling one feeling as a whole, which is slow to change and takes a process of time, which means the divine feminine collective as a whole is felt as a feeling that's really slow and changing and understanding, because it's completely blind to information, and it only feels feelings, and the feelings change based upon the experience of women as a group, as a whole collective, that includes all of their experience. It's a collective experience, which means that it takes process over weeks and months or years before their collective starts to be changing, because the collective doesn't get changed by what one woman sees or what a group of small women see. It only gets changed by a mass group of women that have seen the same thing for a while and it's starting to become evident. Then the collective changes into whatever it is. Um, at this point, if anything could be done, okay. Okay, that's it. I will talk to y'all in the next one.